Continuing on with my top 30 favorite TV shows of all time, we have entered the top 20, and now we're at number 19. Another animated show. I mean, you can just tell that I love animation so much, especially these animated shows that we've talked about on here so far. I mean, we've talked about a regular show, we've talked about The Critic, Gravity Falls, Dilbert, Avatar, Animaniacs, Tiny Toons. I mean, animation plays a big part of my life, and one of those shows that really is another one of those shows that does play into it is number 19 on my list, and that is Mike Judge's King of the Hill. Now, I do like Beavis and Butthead a lot, don't get me wrong, but in terms of which show I think is slightly better than the other, King of the Hill definitely is the better show. I mean, Beavis and Butthead is a fun show to watch as a kid growing up, and it is fun to watch and as an adult to see, see how stupid these two guys really are, but actually how much smarter they were compared to other people in terms of some of their situations they put themselves into. Like, it's like Dumb and Dumber, the original Dumb and Dumber, where it's just like these guys are some of the biggest idiots ever, and yet they are actually more saner than some of the saner people that they're supposed to be, the people that they're supposed to be foils with in their universes. But King of the Hill is much more of a straightforward, very Simpson-esque type of show, but most notably, it was the first major successful animated adult show for adults since The Simpsons had come out. Keep in mind, The Critic only lasted 2 seasons. And there was all these other shows like Family Dog, Fish Police, Capital Critters that were trying to capture The Simpsons mold, but neither one of those shows were as successful as The Simpsons were until King of the Hill came around. And Fox basically said, well, we got Mike Judge here, but we also need to get somebody who works on The Simpsons to, kind of distance the show from The Simpsons style, but also try to create a show that's very similar to The Simpsons. And King of the Hill definitely has that feeling of that. In the show, you follow the Hills, an American family who live in the fictional city of Arlen, Texas, as well as their neighbors, co-workers, relatives, classmates, friends, and acquaintances. The show's realistic approach seeks humor in the conventional and mundane aspects of everyday life, blue-collar workers, family conflicts, and the trials of puberty. Hank Hill, of course, is the main focus of the show, voiced by Mike Judge. He also has a wife named Peggy, played by Kathy and the Jimmy. His son is Bobby, played by Pamela Adlon. You also have characters voiced by Brittany Murphy, the late Johnny Hardwick, Stephen Root, Toby Huss, Ashley Gardner, the late Jonathan Joss, Lauren Tom Breckenmeyer, and Tom Petty. And also the late Brittany Murphy, too. Yeah, 3 people in this show have died in the last... 4 people have died on the show for the last 16 years. Yeah, that's. Not really because of the show's fault. This isn't like a poltergeist curse type of thing. It's just like, just unfortunate things happen, especially considering what happened to the guy who played John Redcorn, which that was a tragic story about what happened to him. But regardless, what made King of the Hill work, I think, better than The Simpsons did is that. Remember how The Simpsons started off the first couple of seasons? There was comedy in there, but there was more sense of realism, of a realistic setup overall. And then they kind of steered away from that, and that worked out in The Simpsons' favor. But King of the Hill never really left that. There were a couple of times when they kind of did for like special Halloween episodes or holiday episodes. I remember. Is the one that always comes to mind is the Halloween episode with Michael Keaton, which basically was originally supposed to be a Halloween episode, and then just kind of ends abruptly with it. It kind of ends on this bizarre note where Michael Keaton's character wanted Luann to be like he owned this. I think it was I'm trying to remember what it was, but he like owned this. He was like this owner of a pork processing plant who wanted Luann to be just like the woman on the company logo, to the point where, he was literally like dyeing her hair and giving her pigtails and making it seem, giving her these weird pig things to make it seem like that person. And then it ends on this really bizarre ending where Michael Keaton's character basically, gets shocked and wakes up to realize, oh my God, I can suddenly see clearly. He's on this conveyor belt that's heading into this thing with a what do you call it, with like this big nail that's about to impale him, and he's just like, what am I doing in a pig costume? And he turns around and it's too little too late. He gets killed by that, and then the episode just kind of ends like that. It's just like it's a bizarre episode for so many different reasons, just because of the dark and graphic content. But on top of that, Peggy and Luann literally just see a guy getting slaughtered to death, and they're just like, oh well, them's the breaks, let's go back on their regular lives. It's just kind of like, this is a weird episode, man. I should do a whole video just on this episode alone, but there are other people out there who have done it so much better. I mean, granted, yeah, it was supposed to be a non-canon Halloween episode like the Treehouse of Horror episodes, but still, like, this is really odd stuff. But again, there are videos out there that probably would explain it better than I do. But in terms of the show itself, though, what made King of the Hill great was that it was a slice of life, realistic setting that The Simpsons had early on, but King of the Hill did it for most of the entire show. You did get behind the characters a lot in this. Everybody in here plays their parts very well here. Mike Judge is great playing Hank, and he's also Boomhauer as well. And the great thing about Hank is that he's a conservative person, but he's not afraid to open up to new things in general here, especially when he sees the things around him in particular that gets him wild up and realizes that he has to really think about his overall opinions and everything. Like, the one that always sticks out to me is when, we had the 2000 election, and then there was an episode where, Bobby had saved, I think he saved like a pig at a fair, and he goes to, and they get invited to the George Bush estate, because this was like a very powerful pig that he was involved in, and, Hank is all in on George Bush, and then when he meets him, he shakes his hand, and Hank suddenly realizes that something is off here, and then when George Bush goes away, Peggy asks him, Hank, what's wrong? And he's just like, oh my God, his handshake, it's limp. And then the rest of the episode is basically him figuring out whether or not he should vote for the guy or not. And it isn't one of those, choose your own ending situations here. But knowing Hank, he probably did vote for Bush in the end. Here's the thing about what makes Hank Hill such a great character is that, like I said, he's a conservative, but he's somebody who is open to new ideas if he finds himself in that situation in general. But, I love, one of my favorite episodes is when, Dale, who's like the conspiracy theorist guy on the show, realizes that, he's been lied to all this time because of the I think it's the Warren G. Harding report. The Warren Commission report, not the Warren G. Harding report. So he reads it, and he finds that, and he sees things that goes against everything he believes in, and all of a sudden he goes from becoming a government-hating conspiracy theorist to loving the government, and it's Hank the one who is having trouble with the government because they keep making the mistake of calling him a woman on his driver's license. And there's a big part of the episode where, Dale's going so crazy to get Hank to believe in the power of America that he literally paints the flag on his roof, and he's so pissed off at Dale is because of this, because Dale literally calls the FBI on him, and it's just like, that's what makes Hank that's what makes Hank such a great character overall in the series overall. That he is what he is, but he is willing to learn from his mistakes a lot during the show. Bobby is a great character too, because the whole thing about him is that boy ain't right. But when you watch Bobby, Bobby is a great character because he evolves as the show goes along. He's not just the typical son character like a Bart Simpson or Chris Griffin or somebody like that. But no, he's a character that does evolve as the series goes on. He does take chances. He doesn't have mistakes. He does mistakes, and he learns from those mistakes. But he's not He's not afraid He's not afraid to do his own thing. Like, there's a great episode where he dates a vegan played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, and he dumps him, and she dumps him, and they go out to this steak restaurant, and, she's there, and they have this thing where, you can eat this, I think it's like a 20-pound steak or something like that, if you can eat that in a couple, it's one of those types of things we've seen before in other shows, like The Simpsons did it, where, you eat this 20-pound steak, and, Bobby says, I'll do it, and he does it despite the vegan, and, yeah, you give him a lot of credit for, because, he'll do these things, and he's not afraid to prove to somebody that you made a big mistake. I like his relationship with Connie throughout the show. I do like they have a nice chemistry together as not just a couple, but also friends. Joseph's pretty good in the show. Luann is really fun on the show too. She's your tip. She's the typical not so smart person, but you do care about these people. The thing about the show is you do care about every single person on this show, regardless of their situations. You do get behind Peggy, even though she can come off as some kind of self-absorbed. You do get behind somebody like a Bill, who is so distraught over his divorce from his wife. There's a fantastic Christmas episode where he's on the cusp of killing himself, and then at some point he just decides, I'm going to become my ex-wife, and Hank has to dress up in a dress and basically tell him, I am Lenore, and I'm telling you to get your shit over with. Not like that, but it's like the dialogue on the show is really good. Bill has some great episodes, not just that one, but like there's a great episode where Bill is pissed off at Boomhauer for stealing the girl that he was going to ask out on a date, and at the end of the episode, when Boomhauer gets dumped by this person, it's Bill that has to be the one that tells him to snap out of it and get back to your life, man. And I'm kind of like cliff noting this whole thing, but you really need to watch the show for yourself to really appreciate the value of the show. This show ran for 13 seasons on Fox, and nearly every season was a winner. I mean, there was a couple of episodes that weren't that strong, but the show was pretty good in its initial run. And we just had this past summer the reboot, which I think really is it's really one of those great reboots in history. I mean, this is a fantastic reboot of the show. It's been 15 years since we've seen The Hills, and it really does feel like nothing on the show has changed. The feel of the show has not changed a beat. The voice acting can be somewhat distracting at times once you get around it, but I think it does play very well. Toby Huss has now replaced Dale, has now replaced Johnny Hardwick as Dale, and I think it's okay. You get used to it pretty quickly. Ronnie Chang is doing the voice of Khan in this. And yeah, some people didn't like him at first, but it was just one episode, and I thought it worked okay. What's great about the show is the evolution of Bobby Hill. He's a very fascinating person to watch as a 21-year-old operating his own restaurant and doing things his own way. The progression with him throughout the season is great to watch. I do like that he and Hank bond closer as father and son, even though their views of the modern world will always be different. I like the chemistry I like that Bobby still is a ladies' man, and yet he and Connie still have that great chemistry they had in the original series. It's like they never lost a beat with that. And, the first episode of that show alone really set the tone for the rest of the show in general here. It's like everything has aged, but Hank and Peggy have not changed their ways of their characters and their way with the it's in the end of the show with their meaning that they're willing to adapt to the changing world. Like, the end of the first episode of the reboot is basically them, Hank and Peggy had been away in Saudi Arabia for several years because of a thing with the, I think it was a thing with the, if I remember right, I think it was something with Strickland Propane or something like that, but I could be wrong on that, but, they want to move back there because they feel like they can't handle the changing world, so they go to the Megalo Mart and see Girl Scout cookies being sold out in front, and Hank asks if hey, do you have Samoas? But they're renamed Caramel Delights because it's most respectful to people from Samoa, and Hank is like, that's a good change, and the girl said, it's nice to be nice. That moment right there really said to me, King of the Hill was back and in good hands, and especially in the world we're living in today, we need it now more than ever, man. King of the Hill is one of those great shows, and just the fact that this season alone really set the tone for something that is desperately needed in the world right now with the way the world has been going around. Like, it's great to have the show back overall because the show has not lost a beat so far, and it really is one of those shows that is just so damn good. I mean, yeah, Beavis and Butthead is the one that probably makes the most money from Mike Judge and is probably the more fun of the shows, but as a grown-up kid, as a kid you love Beavis and Butthead, but as a grown-up you learn to appreciate King of the Hill more and more as time goes on. Just a fantastic show. I wish I could delve more into this, but I'm already at 13 minutes worth of talking on this. But King of the Hill really is one of the best shows I've ever seen. Number 19 on my list of my favorite TV shows of all time. I would say see it if you haven't seen it already, but more than likely you probably have. But if you haven't, watch King of the Hill, man. Watch King of the Hill. So there you go. That's my thoughts on King of the Hill, my 19th favorite TV show of all time. If you want to hear what I had to say about The Critic, my 20th favorite TV show, check out the link below, and check out the playlist as well. So I'll see you guys next time.